Hey everyone, welcome back to Miniature Painting 101, a series of videos where I teach you about painting miniatures from start to finish. However, today's video is going to be a little different. It's going to be part 19, how to strip miniatures safely and effectively. So that begs the question, why strip miniatures? I thought the goal is to paint the miniatures. Well, there's a few reasons why you might want to strip the paint off the miniatures entirely. They include maybe you want to repaint some of your old miniatures that you've improved upon since, to fix a mistake that is just impossible to fix, or to repaint purchased miniatures if you've purchased some miniatures from someone else and you want to repaint them. Or you just have some awesome fans who donated some miniatures to you and you want to strip them so they look awesome as well. But either way, basically the goal is to strip the entire miniature, all the surface, so that way there's no evidence that you've repainted in multiple layers. The cons of stripping miniatures are that you are going to be dealing with chemicals that are potentially harmful. Usually they're skin irritants, and some of them can also be toxic, so watch out when using these chemicals, and always take precautions, such as working in ventilated areas, and making sure it doesn't come in contact with your skin. Obviously, now we should cover what are the ingredients you need to strip a miniature. Well, first of all, you need a miniature, like this ice golem from Malifaux. Basically, he's pretty scratched up and he's not looking amazingly, so I've decided that I am going to strip him completely so that I can repaint him in an awesome fashion, hopefully, and that he turns out well. However, as you see, based on if I tried to repaint over him, it would be evident that I've repainted over an old paint job. So I decided to just strip it clean, reprime it, and go again. And of course, next you need something to dissolve the paint off of. Now, the two preferred stripper agents that people tend to use with miniatures is concentrated household cleaners, such as this Simple Green, which can be found at basically any hardware store, Canadian Tire if you live in Canada. Or the other one is brake fluid. Once again, both of them are irritants. They both obviously have some removing powers from paint, so you don't want to get any of this on your skin, and if so, clean it off, wipe it off, or rinse it off very quickly. But as I said, they're not very hard to come upon, and they can be purchased for a very cheap, low price. Third, you will need a container for the miniature to go into and be stripped in. I prefer sealed glass jars, because they're sealed, and if you knock them over, they don't spill all over the place, and they run a lot less risk of spilling anywhere, getting on anything you don't want to. The only thing I recommend with these jars is don't store them in very cold or very hot areas, because hot areas and cold areas will basically mess with the lid, and then you can't open the jar. This is an optional part, but I highly recommend a small strainer, such as this one. It's great for saving your model pieces from going down the sink, and for saving the stripping fluid if you want to put it between jars. I actually recommend using two jars, one to strip the miniature in, and then one to pour the post-stripped fluid into. And finally, a brush. You can use a paintbrush. I'm going to use actually a toothbrush. Feel free to use a really cheap toothbrush. And if you really want to start a fight, your wives or your sisters or your husband's toothbrush, but just warning, it will leave a very bad taste in their mouth, literally. And lastly, some small device like a paperclip here, just to scratch out and get in those crevices and remove the hard to reach paint. So now that we have the miniature, it's time to start stripping the miniature. So let's begin. I open up my jar, and I put the miniature in. I like to put the miniature in first prior to adding the stripping fluid, because that way you guarantee that you don't throw it in and it overflows. Next, and also you get to use the minimum amount that you require. That way you get to save as much as possible for future use, though I will reuse this fluid many, many times over again in the future. And I pour in the Simple Green. Like, once again, you can use brake fluid if you want, but I prefer Simple Green. And I just make sure that it covers all the way up just past the miniature. And of course, seal it. This is not a very hard tutorial, of course. So I make sure that the cleaner agent is completely put away first, and then just put on my lid. Tighten the lid and make sure that it's nice and tight. Once again, you don't want this spilling anywhere. This is an irritant. You don't want it spilling everywhere. It will strip the paint off your cutting board, for example, and stuff like that. So you don't want to do that. Now you got to set it aside and wait. Wait and wait and wait. I like to wait about 24 hours. If it is varnished, you may have to wait a little longer, maybe a day and a half to 2 days. After about a day, open it up, and you can see the miniature. And basically, you can see that the paint will be starting to peel off just by itself. Next, I put my strainer on another jar, so that way I can keep the fluid. If you don't really care about it, feel free to just dump it down the drain. Put the strainer on the sinkhole and just dump it down, but I like to keep the fluid so that I can strip more miniatures in the future. And I just pour the fluid over the jar and over the strainer. That way it catches the miniature. And for example, you will notice that these agents will remove the not only the paint, but the glue. So your models will typically need to be re-glued as well, especially if you use super glue. So as you can see here, his arm did come off, or his arm will come off because the glue was weakened, and all the parts are saved so that I can just make sure that they're stripped. And there's the arm. As you can see, it came off. And now I can seal up the other jar and put the simple green back in the original jar and save it for a rainy day when I have to strip another miniature. Seal it up. Once again, you don't want it to get anywhere. And set it aside. I'm using my washroom for the sake. And then I put the strainer over the sink, because when you're cleaning your miniature, you do not want it to accidentally fall into the sink, obviously. And now I'm going to use a cheap toothbrush. I bought this at a grocery store for $1. As I said, if you really want to start a fight, use your spouse's or siblings' toothbrush. Things will get interesting, I promise. And then I just rinse it under warm water. You don't want to go hot water, especially if the model is plastic or it is a resin, because then you will end up warping the model. And I just repeatedly scrub it. As you can see, the paint's coming off very easily. I just make sure I basically do it like I'm brushing my teeth, scrubbing the miniature with the brush, removing all the paint. And if there's any really hard to reach crevices, use a toothbrush, a toothpick or a paper clip just to clean out those areas. But as you can see, the paint is coming off extremely well off this miniature. And yeah, I just keep the water warm, and then I repeat this process on the arms. It's also great that strainer is also really good for now collecting the paint so that it doesn't all go down the drain. You really want to dump that much paint down the drain. And once again, now after you're cleaning your miniature, you want to make sure that it is thoroughly rinsed off and that all remnants of the simple green or stripping agent are removed from the miniature, because this will really cause a problem if you try to then reprime it and clean it over. So make sure that it's thoroughly rinsed off and completely dry before proceeding to the priming stage. Then you want to re-glue it together and then prime it, and you're good to go. So I clean it out. So now I'm just using that paper clip and removing a little bit of the extra paint that was stuck between the fingers. Comes off, as I said, relatively easy. And as I said, if you end up washing off and scrubbing off your miniature and the paint just isn't coming off, just repeat the process, put it back in the jar, wait another 12 to 24 hours, and then rebrush off the miniature, and the paint will come off eventually. This is harder for models that have been repeatedly varnished, because it does tend to protect the layers. And in the end, collect all the paint in the strainer and throw it in the garbage. That way it doesn't go down your sink. And that's it. So thank you very much for watching this Miniature Painting 101. I promise next time it will be back to painting. And stay tuned for part 20, which, as I mentioned, will be back onto painting your miniatures rather than removing the paint. And if you really like this Miniature Painting 101, check out The Warp, my premium YouTube channel. Click on the link below for a free 14-day trial to my YouTube channel, where not only we get to see the next 3 months worth of Miniature Painting 101 episodes, you also get to see start to finish painting tutorials and extra battle reports and post games and Let's Play with Jays and just some awesome wargaming content. So thank you so much for checking out this episode. Until next time, this is Jay saying, happy painting, everyone.